What's up, guys? So I am fresh from the range with my CZ-52 and just shot it. Haven't shot it in a while, so I figured I would tell you guys about it. And my cat is pushing on my camera stand. But I think I'm going to be selling this gun pretty soon, so I just wanted to take an opportunity to talk about it before I did. I'm not going to say this is a review per se, because I haven't had a ton of trigger time with this gun. I've probably put, I don't know, maybe 200 rounds through it, and this is not what I'd consider a pristine example of a CZ-52. This one is in kind of rough shape. Like there's some frosting in the bore, so I think that impacts its accuracy. Cosmetically, there was some rust and some scuffs and everything like that. But this particular one's interesting because it was made in 1953, and the Czechoslovakian military re-arsenaled a bunch of these like in the 60s or 70s, halfway through its service. This one was not. So it is as it came from the factory back in 1953, and its finish definitely reflects that. But also interesting, there's a freaking hair on it, probably a cat hair. But all the parts match. The barrel and the slide and the frame all have matching serial numbers, so that's pretty neat. There is a really cool video, I forget the name of the YouTuber, but the title of the video is The Sad Story of the CZ-52. The channel is all about like Czech weapons, Czech and Czechoslovakian weapons. So that talks a lot in depth about the history of the CZ-52, and just kind of as an overview, this gun came about shortly after World War II, and it became the Czechoslovakian military sidearm starting in 1952, hence the name. And it uses a very interesting roller-locked mechanism for its operating paradigm, which is, the system in this gun is basically what you find in the German MG42 machine gun. It's kind of a miniaturized mirror image of what's in the MG42. I have another video called Roller Operated Firearms, a Brief Hipstery, and I talk more in depth about the roller locking mechanism, and I contrast it to the roller delayed mechanism. This is my HK-P9S. They both use rollers, but it's a different system. This gun uses a fixed barrel. This gun uses a moving barrel, and I'll briefly, kind of show you how it works. But these guns are pretty easy to take down. You just pull this thing down, and the slide just comes off. Basically, you've got these rollers here that are in these little nooks, and that's what locks the barrel to the slide. And then, as the recoil cycle begins, there's a little nub on the frame here. This little thing right here, and that pushes this forward relative to the rest of the barrel, and then the rollers can reach these sloped sides, and they kind of retract out of those little nooks, and that unlocks the barrel from the slide. The gun was originally designed in 9mm, and I tend to think that Jan and Yaroslav Kratoval, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but they're two brothers, and they designed this gun. And I think they really had a vision for, to make the best handgun in the world. And, when they originally designed this thing, it was ahead of its time. It was on another level. The gun was so good and so accurate that, and this is what I learned in that Czech guy's video. He was saying that the Swiss actually looked at the original iteration of this gun when they, in the late 40s, when they were looking to replace the Luger, and we know the SIG P210, aka the P49, became their sidearm, and that's renowned for accuracy. But in the tests, between the Kratochvil brothers prototype for this gun and the prototype for the P49, like, this was actually shooting tighter groups than the SIG P210. But as as the early 50s kind of rolled on, Czechoslovakia came more under the sway of the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact sphere of influence, and the communist establishment forced changes on this gun that really kind of undermined its potential. And that's in that video, The Sad Story of the CZ-52. That's kind of that guy's main point. Very interesting. And again, he has a lot more detail than I'm giving you here. But anyway, they forced, the Czechoslovakian military to use the 7.62 Tokarev round, which is kind of a cool round, but it forced dimensional changes in the gun, and it gave it this very deep grip because it's a fairly long cartridge. It's not all that ergonomic. It's a little awkward. I mean, it's not necessarily uncomfortable. It's just, it's not ideal. It feels like it was kind of an afterthought. Like, if the grip was less deep, I think it would feel really, really good. Also, the gun was originally designed in double action, single action, and for some reason they eliminated the double action mechanism, and it's a single action only gun, but it still has a decocker. And you have your safety lever here, and if you push up, it's unsafe right now, and if you push up, it decocks. I'll try and do it here. Supposedly, these things aren't... I have read that there is sometimes a risk of the gun discharging when you decock because whatever part it slams into can atrophy and break. So I haven't really decocked it with a round in the chamber, and there's really no reason to, if you're just shooting, because it's a single action only gun. Also, I've heard the firing pins are pretty brittle in this, so you shouldn't dry fire them. They're made from like a cheap casting, so those will break. I've read several things online from forums and stuff that corroborate that. I think that's probably legit. So I've never dry fired this gun. I've also heard that the rollers that that you saw when I showed you the internals, those maybe weren't heat treated as well as they could be, and after a while they can kind of lose their shape and affect how the gun cycles. So it has some quirks and shortcomings, and I tend to think that maybe this gun was just too complex, too advanced, and too ahead of its time for the situation, the geopolitical situation, and in terms of the industry in a communist country in the early 50s, I'm just not sure they were equipped to get the most out of a gun that's this advanced and has this advanced of a design. So hearing about all of this gun's quirks, and the firing pin's gonna break, the decocker's gonna break, and the rollers are gonna deform, and it's not gonna work right, I guess I expected this pistol to just feel like a flimsy, kind of janky piece of shit. like it wouldn't be well made. It would just be kind of, rattly and just, kind of a low quality gun. And nothing could be further from the truth. This gun is extremely solid, extremely well made. I was really surprised how solid the thing feels. I mean, there is basically zero play in the slide to frame fit. Everything feels tight. Everything's nicely machined. Like, it's rough. It's crude. It's not cosmetically impressive, but it's a really well-made piece of hardware. It really is. I think, given the context of being produced by a communist country, they cut corners on some things that they shouldn't have, like the cast firing pin, and the rollers probably weren't hardened as much as they should have been, and so you have some of those shortcomings there, and maybe they didn't have the technology to really finish the parts and the hardening and heat treating that needed to be done on a gun like this. While it is well made, it just does have some shortcomings given the context in which it was manufactured and used. Being kind of a gun hipster and liking more interesting, kind of offbeat guns, certainly the CZ-52 was always on my radar, and they've always been cheap, and maybe I'll pick up one of those, and I finally did. I found this in a pawn shop for less than $300, so I figured, how could I go wrong? And I'll say that the gun has been completely reliable. Like I said, I've probably put 200 rounds through it. I've never had a jam or a failure to feed, failure to eject, or anything like that. So the gun runs. It really does. And, you know, the magazine's old. Everything on the gun is old. I did replace the recoil spring, so the slide has a nice firm action to it. So I think that probably helped. Like I said, it's not that accurate. If you can see some of the groups I'm showing you, they're not great. And the trigger doesn't help. It's a really heavy single action trigger. Like the wall is heavy. Like you get there and it's like, ugh, and it just kind of throws you off. Like I said, the ergonomics are not great. I think if you could somehow get some G10 grips that had a little more on the side, the grip is very thin and it doesn't offer a lot of like lateral stability. I think that would probably help you stabilize the gun. And I want to say there were G10 grips or are G10 grips made for this, so that's certainly an option if you grab one of these. Another thing that's kind of annoying about this gun when you're shooting it is sometimes your finger kind of bumps the safety on as you're shooting. And sometimes I wonder if the safety's not loose and it just kind of works itself on a little bit. Because sometimes you'll get like, it just feels like an extra heavy trigger pull. It's like, what's going on? And you pull through it and you can still shoot it and then you just kind of jerk the gun. So that's another thing that contributes to shitty accuracy. But what's happening is, and it happens in my shooting footage, the safety's actually partially going on as you're shooting it. So that kind of sucks. Maybe if I replace the safety lever with a different one that was maybe less worn or something, that wouldn't happen. But I'll say this, for all its quirks and its shortcomings, the gun is fun to shoot. The recoil impulse is super smooth and soft, and you know it's got those rollers in there. And while they're different systems, you have that same sense of smoothness, I think, because you know it's cycling literally on rollers with the HK-P9S, and it's very smooth. And while the Tokarev cartridge is a pretty hot cartridge, I mean, you get a lot of report, there's big booms, you get fireballs out of the muzzle, but it really dampens, you know, what would otherwise be a pretty sharp recoil impulse, I think, and it makes shooting this thing fun. And you know, I've mag dumped this thing, just boom, 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 and it cycles, it works. That's pretty impressive for a gun this old. Yeah, you know, if it had a better bore and it was at its full potential for accuracy, I think it would be a perfectly serviceable, you know, gun to use for self-defense or whatever it is. And even this, like, it shoots center mass. It's not that bad. Another thing that's worth mentioning is there's a company called Harrington Products, which makes a full line of like replacement parts for the CZ-52. You can get you know, hardened rollers, you can get new extractors, I think you can get new barrels for these, new firing pins. So you can really basically rebuild these guns and kind of have a brand new pistol that has up to like modern standards with very precise, very high quality parts in it, and that's pretty cool. So, and I think, you know, a gun like this could fill a role as like a, I don't know, a nice trail gun. Like the Tokarev round is, like I said, is very potent. It moves at a high velocity. I mean, I think it it will do the job. You get that really nice soft feel with the roller system. So I've actually not shot a proper Tokarev, but I can't imagine it shooting smoother than this. This is a really nice shooting gun, and you know, if you wanted to invest in kind of bringing one of these up to modern standards, you could have yourself a pretty cool pistol that, you know, shoots that hot little cartridge. So I think it's a cool gun. It was available and I'd never owned one before, and I just wanted to experience it. But, you know, Tokarev ammo is not easy to come by. It's kind of expensive, and you've got to order it, and I don't know. I'm not gonna just keep Tokarev ammo on hand to run this thing, and I got some other expenses coming up here for the house and everything like that. So I figure I'll just sell it. But my wife told me never sell a gun without making a video on it. So here we are. In any case, like I said, check out that other video, Roller Operated Firearms, a brief hipstery, and I talk more in depth about the mechanical aspects of the roller locking mechanism and the roller delayed mechanism. And the roller delayed mechanism is the same mechanism you find on the HK MP5 submachine gun and the HK G3 rifles, and their cousins, their Spanish cousins, the Set-Me rifles. This gun's amazing. Like, it's one of the best shooting, most accurate handguns I've ever experienced, and this is honestly kind of a shitty surplus rebuilt one, and it's still one of my most accurate pistols. So I guess that's really all I got to say on the CZ-52. It's a neat gun. I definitely recommend trying one, just if you can find a good deal on one. It's fun to shoot, and it's fun to experience, but you know, it's not one of those things I'm gonna shoot a whole lot. So c'est la vie. I will be moving it on. So thank you so much for watching, and this is Hipster Tactical, and I am Matt.